Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of UGASports Live. My name is Radi Nabulsi. I'm joined by Jed May, our half recruiting writer, half team writer, but a complete good person.
I'll take that. That's not where I thought that sentence was going to end, so I'll take it.
Use on the cusp there. I say that just for Kate's sake because you guys are engaged and getting married during football season.
Right, for sure.
Yeah. Coach Downing can't be with us today. We are hoping that he'll be with us later in the season as we get started with covering Georgia football again. I mean, not that we ever stop, but we actually have practices to cover now. So this Friday, the Bulldogs start practice. Thursday, we get to talk to Kirby Smart. They did say that there will be some open practice periods. We're not sure when, so I'm not going to get my hopes up, but that's kind of why we want to get together this Tuesday. I mean, we could have waited until next week, but I'm like, well, now let's go ahead and preview what's coming up because I really want to know what Jed's going to see. We do this every year. This will be oh my God, Jed, this is my 32nd year covering Georgia football. Every year we're standing outside that gate waiting to go in, and it's like, who's going to focus on what? It used to be that each outlet would send one person, two people. We sometimes send 7 or 8 different reporters to cover it. And, we'll send one guy just to cover the secondary. One person charts all the quarterback throws. One person watches the O-line, the D-line, stuff like that. And I usually ask, what do you want to see? What do you want to look at? And Jed usually takes I don't say the most critical area, but the area with the most questions. So Jed, we'll talk about the offseason stuff here in a bit, but I want to know, when we stand outside that gate and I'm giving out assignments as to who's going to cover what, where are you going?
Yeah, I think you got to look at the lines of scrimmage, right? Because the offensive line, the players are back, but it's going to look different because okay, you could say you've got Monroe Freeling back and Ernest Green back. That's 2 kind of starters, but it sounds like it's going to be Freeling at left tackle and Green at right. So that's kind of a shakeup. You got Michael Morris back, who, he's played a lot, but I remember last year was kind of you remember Kirby Smart saying, Micah Morris basically needs to step it up and practice better. So he's your veteran now. So he's a guy that you got to watch. Drew Bobo is your center now. What's he going to look like? And then right guard, it kind of seemed like it was Daniel Calhoun's job in the spring. Then he got hurt and missed a good chunk of spring, I think, including G-Day. So it's still his job as somebody else risen to battle with him for the offensive line, I think, and then defensive line. You lose so many guys, and the question is, can this team get back to stopping the run at the level it did in 21-22? Haven't been bad, but I wouldn't say, and they wouldn't say, they've been at the level they were those couple of years. So what does Jordan Hall look like? What does Elijah Griffin look like? That's the guy that even Kirby Smart has been very, has put a lot of praise on, which isn't necessarily his MO for freshmen. What does he look like? What does Xavier McLeod look like in year 2? All these guys. What does Joseph Jonah-Johnny look like now that he's healthy? All these guys are going to be counted on to provide those game-breaking presences up front because you're gonna need to do that. So lines of scrimmage and then receivers too. I think just because what does Zachariah Branch look like? Noah Thomas. I remember in spring, Roddy, we saw Noah Thomas and we were like, "Who is that guy? Who is that guy?" Why did this tight end get lost and come hang out with the receiver? So
he's new. He doesn't know where to go.
I keep seeing these visions of Colby Young on one side, Noah Thomas on one side, and then in the slot you've got Zachariah Branch in one slot, and say you could split out Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky, you could put Dylan Bell in the slot. There's so many. Obviously, Dylan Bell can play outside. Thomas has played in the slot from what recruits have seen in practice. So there's so many mixing and matching things you can do at receiver. Plus, when you throw those tight ends in, it's going to be there's no shortage of weapons. I think last year was the receivers. Obviously, we know they didn't play well, right? They dropped a lot of passes, questions about creating separation, all that stuff. That on paper, this is a very, very, very talented group for sure. So lines of scrimmage, then what the receivers look like, I think is going to be what I'm jockeying to see on if we get to watch on Thursday afternoon.
Which is the frustrating thing is when we actually do get to watch. When we actually get to watch them do their practices, we don't get to see them very often go head to head. So it's tough to get a gauge on how the offensive line or the defensive line is going to do. We get to see the defensive line guys hit the pads. We get to see the offensive line guys, work on their blocking assignments. But at least you get an idea of who lines up where. So I'm with you there. We can get into the Mike Bobo hatred, the Georgia's run game issues and all that. But I thought we had a very interesting piece yesterday from Brent Rollins, who does our Film Don't Lie thing. And he pointed out that Georgia's defense last year, especially on first down, worst defense Georgia's had since 2016. I'm not defending Mike Bobo or giving the offense a pass. You saw the first half struggles all year long. They weren't putting up 45 points a game. There were times they couldn't move it, and they made it tougher on the defense. The defense also did not make it any better on the offense. Where were the short fields? Where were the turnovers? It was a systematic issue. So I'm with you. When I go out there, the first thing I would like to see, my first questions, everyone wants to talk about, the Gunnar Stockton question. Everybody wants to talk about what's Georgia going to do in the secondary. Who's starting opposite corner? Is it still going to be Harris? Harris got torched. Seven's getting torched all the time. Well, is it Ellis Robinson's season? I don't know, but I'm with you. There were so many times when Georgia's defense faced a 3rd and 2 that the other team converted. A lot of times it was because they picked up 8 on first down.
Mm-hmm.
The first downs that Brent pointed out last year were just terrible for Georgia's defense. They just got
stop on the run. And like everybody talks about, Georgia getting after the passer and actually getting sacks and whatever. It's easier to get a sack when you're on 3rd and 9 and you're like, okay, they are 97%. They're going to be throwing
show pass.
It's 3rd and 4. They could slip a run in. And I think what you said there, like that is something just that I'm watching all fall camp, because you've gotten this question 1,000 times this offseason, I'm sure too. Like, oh, what do you think of Gunnar? Like, Gunnar, that's a question, right? But there are so many other things that this team needs to improve on, or whoever your quarterback is, doesn't matter. You got to run the ball better. You got to catch the ball when Gunnar throws it to you. You got to stop the run better. You got to get some this outside linebacker room. Damon Wilson's gone. Sam Pimba's gone. There's Chaz Chambliss is off, after 10 years in Athens. So there's so many questions there. We've heard a lot of good things about Elo Modozi, but he's a guy that came from Army, right? I mean, to say what it is, this is a step up in competition for him. When he puts the pads on it's going to be different. So, the Gunnar thing is what's at the top of everybody's mind. And I get it. And there's a lot of questions we have about him too, but he is far from the only, this isn't like a ready-made team and we're just seeing what's happening at quarterback. There's a lot of other stuff.
No, and that was going to be my point is when you look at the fact that they couldn't stop the run, or they gave up big plays on first down. And then the flip side, Georgia on 3rd and 2, Georgia on 3rd and 3, 3rd and 1, they couldn't get it. And you're like, okay, well, the offensive line was terrible. They couldn't run the ball. They had 4 guys drafted on the offensive line. I mean, I remember the Richt era. I remember the Jim Donnan era. I was here for Ray Goff. 4 guys. If I told you had 4 offensive linemen drafted, you would have expected to have won the national title. And granted, they weren't first-round picks. I'm not bagging on any of them. They were injured a lot. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just saying that that should have been, money. It should have been money. So I want to see, can these guys who have starts under their belts, but can you run behind Micah Morris? Can you run behind Daniel Calhoun? Can Drew Bobo pick it up? And you just like, look, at 3rd and 2, we got this. We got Nate Frazier back there. We got Rod Robinson. We're going to get that. And now we got a new set of downs. And now we got Noah Thomas going over the middle. Now we've got Dylan Bell. Hey, now I do have some worries about Branch's catching, but I don't think that the drops are completely gone, but that has been an absolute focus. And I'm told that the wide receiver core is night and day compared to last year. Now, that could just be one of those summer, you see the guys running on millage and everyone gets excited talking about team unity. Every year the optimism rolls back in. But I'm with you. The first thing I'm going to be concerned about is, can Drew make the right calls, the right protections? Are your tackles going to hold up? And we saw them. There were times they played great, and then there were times they got your quarterback killed,
And
and you lost all that production on the defensive line. So that I'm with you. If my butt is puckered as a Georgia fan, it is because I'm worried about the offensive and defensive lines. And we can, I mean, to your point, getting to the outside edges, yeah, pressure on the quarterback. But who's your three technique that's going to, I mean, is Christian Miller going to be the guy? I hope so. But if you get those ironed out, that's 80% of the game, in my opinion. If you can win on either offensive line, defensive line, everything else is 1,000 times easier.
yeah, and you look on paper, you're like, oh man, Georgia lost 4 starters from last year on the offensive line. Like, we are screwed. But last year, like at this time last year, we're like, this unit they've got 9,000 starts under their belt. They're a Joe Moore award. They're finally going to get the elusive Joe Moore award, like all this stuff. And again, injuries had something to do with it, but there were times where they just didn't play that well. So it does. We all always hear about offensive lines. They got to gel together. They got to be tied off the field and work together and all this stuff. And maybe that just wasn't. I don't know, but maybe that just last year's unit, like a lot of the team, especially on offense, they just didn't click last year. Maybe this year's unit hits the ground running. And I think I saw it in the comments over here somewhere. Like somebody said, normally cupcake games at the start of the year don't really get me going, but I think this is what this team needs. And I think you're right. There's a lot of things you can try to get ironed out against Marshall and Austin Peay, because then you hit the ground running. You play at Knoxville, at Tennessee and Knoxville. You get an off week, and then you play Alabama. So once the conference schedule starts, there's no easing into it for sure, because it's Tennessee. That Tennessee game looks different than it did this time a year ago, because obviously Nico Iamaleava's gone. But it's never easy to go up there and win. Georgia didn't win up there for what, Rowdy, 20 years, from 80 to 2000. So that's tough for a quarterback in Gunnar Stockton, who will be making his first SEC start and first true road start. So so I think those games are going to help. It like it was in the comments over here, that the schedule works out good for a team that's got a lot of new pieces and a lot of maybe mixing and matching and ironing things out that they need to do to start off the season.
Yeah. So that's, I guess, my number one concern is, can you run the ball, because it sounds too simplistic, but can you win in the trenches? I mean, I've had the debate all summer, people who are banging on Mike Bobo, which again, if Mike Bobo gets fired, that's the best thing for UGASports.com. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I'm just saying a coaching search in any form or fashion, people come to the message board to find out what's going on. So now that we are part of the On3 network and one of the bigger sites on there, we have more reach than we ever did before. If we've broken a ton of coaching searches, who the coaching, who they were going to hire. If we get that put out by On3, and we got Nakos and Andy and all those guys putting out, as first reported by UGAsports.com, Georgia's new offensive coordinator that's great for us. So I'm never going to be accused of being a defender, but I'm like, look, there are other issues that has to deal with, and this is where we are. I'm like, I've hear my first now. I'm very excited about Georgia's special teams. Nice Coach Donna for 5 years doing live broadcasts and not realize how important special teams are.
And swept the all SEC, the preseason all SEC first team on split, which I've
never seen anything like it.
I've never seen that before. Never seen that before. So,
but the people that are saying, you got to catch, I'm like, there was so much that was fixable from last year. I don't blame the coaches when players drop passes or fumble the ball. If you've ever been to practice, how much they work on that stuff. And then they don't do it in practice. They do it right. Then they get in the game and they drop it, or miss tackles. I'm not going to blame Glenn Schumann when his linebackers get up there and miss tackles and take bad angles, when I've seen him work them to death to get it right. So I'm with you there. I want to see in other words, I want an honest assessment, or a more accurate assessment, if they did the things they're taught to do. That's what I'd love to see. I'd love to see them. Hey, we did everything right, And then if they do everything right and it's bad coaching, well, we call out bad coaching that these guys screwed that up. So,
believe it or not, based on how the first 15 minutes of the show was going, there are some reasons for optimism, right? Like there are.
Dude, I'm about to get into it.
Very excited to see Nate Frazier with a full season as RB1, because I think even when they show random old games on ESPNU or whatever, and you watch him just for background noise, you see Nate Frazier running. This kid just he has a different burst, a different gear, and he's had a whole. Remember last year he wasn't at Georgia in spring last year. He didn't get here till the summer. So how much
we started hearing about him in June?
How much more can he have grown being on campus for another 8 months? I'm excited to see if Jaden Riddell works in at tight end, because that's a guy that, and speaking of, last spring, we were like, this kid, like, okay, you got Oscar Delp, you got Lawson Lucky, Ben Urosic's here. This kid looks, just first team off the bus, looks incredible. Kristen Miller's a guy you mentioned who has flashed so much, and he's going to get his time. People are over in talking about running backs. Can Roderick Robinson stay healthy? Because I think if he can, he's a guy that's got a lot of potential to. I mean, he's 230 pounds, man. You want to tackle that guy? Like, who wants to tackle that dude? And then the linebacker room, like, it's hard to say any linebacker room is going to be on the level of that 21 team, but I think CJ Allen's a stud. Braylon Wilson's an athletic freak. We saw what Chris Cole can do. Nobody hardly talks about Justin Williams. This guy was the number one linebacker in the class and looks phenomenal. He's, probably your fourth linebacker, just based on what he's going to play. They rotate those guys so much, but that's a ridiculous top four. Terrell Foster has been around for forever and constantly gets praised by Glenn Schumann, Kirby Smart, as just a very smart guy who is a leader for that room. So that room's going to be just ridiculous, I think.
To your point about the optimism. So my fear or my concern is, can you win in the trenches? They lost too many players to just simply reload. So you got to rebuild the trenches. Now, a lot of those guys have starts. A lot of them have, like you said, extended periods of time. In the, Ernest Green was going to be the guy. Monroe Freeling played a couple games there. We thought, okay, well, he fixed that issue, and then he had a bad game, and everyone threw him away again. Like, those guys know that they need to get better, and they will. Do the things you're supposed to do. Don't drop passes. Actually pick off balls. Don't take bad angles. Do that. The intangibles are where I'm more excited about this team, because I felt that for the last 2 years, you've been trading off that 2021 and 2022 season. That's kind of why I got off on a little tangent there about Mike Bobo was, when you have all these great players, it's easy to be a good offensive coordinator. We had this discussion really on the board extensively the last few days. That's why it's kind of fresh in my mind. And all the coaches will say, well, I got great players. Great players make great coordinators. I think, though, that Georgia does have great players, especially, and they've been hit by the transfer portal. Talk about, Damon Wilson being gone. Talk about the players they've lost. They lost some big names. They've also missed on, there's teams out there buying up players. There's you don't have Justice Terry and Elijah Griffin, going bookends on that defensive line as true freshmen, because Justice Terry is going to be at Texas. You missed on a few, but I will put Kirby Smart's roster up against anybody's roster. Didn't you had a note today on the board about Georgia's going to be favored in every game? Mm-hmm. If they can, even with the guys they lost, they replaced them with some absolute behemoths on the offensive and defensive line. Somebody's in the comment section talking about Juan Gaston. You're talking about Jaden Reddle. He's about to blow up. Colton Heinrich's going to blow up. Elias Williams, Ethan Barber. Get 6 tight ends. I want to run 14 personnel. I'm like, it's nuts, but I'm like, hey. And then you go back to what Georgia could do when they won those 2 titles in 21 and 22. They dominated on the defensive line, offensive line, both at the same time, which made them really dominant. But if you can just get one, you can have a ridiculous season. But my point is, you have all these talented guys whose names you and I know, the people in the comments section know them, but the general fans don't. They kind of heard about Nate Frazier last year, but it's Trevor Etienne's show. McRae transfers in. They don't know him. This guy could be your leading rusher. They don't know Ryan Puglisi.
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to say anything against Gunnar Stockton. We'll have a Gunnar Stockton segment after our only commercial break. But this is a guy who Ryan Puglisi looks like an NFL guy. He's a good ways behind Ryan against Gunnar Stockton, but Gunner's tough. Gunnar is an absolute warrior. You see him almost get knocked out in that Texas game, and that's the type of guy he is. So your backup quarterback better be ready to go in because he's got it. But I'm talking about the intangibles of kind of that leadership, the new guys that are coming up. We kept expecting the 23 team and the 24 team to be like the 21 and 22 teams because all those guys had played. It was their title or their time. And they would, Carson Beck said, yeah, we won 2 titles, but I wasn't the quarterback. I want my ring. And we kind of expected those guys to come on and do their thing to be like the 21 and 22 team. We're 2 years away from that. Those guys are all gone now. This is going to be a new batch, just like the 2017 team didn't quite get there. 2021 did, 22 did. I think you're going to see a new batch with a new connection. All the NIL, the transfer portal stuff, there is a new connectivity because they work on it all the time. But these guys came up together, and no one's waiting around for the older guys who, I was first backup at right guard on that 22 team. All that stuff's out the window now. They haven't gotten where they wanted to the last 2 years. So now we're going to see Nate Frazier. I mean, you mentioned Frazier. He's a sophomore.
Mm-hmm.
KJ Bolden, sophomore. There are a lot of sophomore leaders on this team. Redshirt junior leaders on this team. There are going to be a lot of new jerseys being bought, is my point, based on a flood of new players who, we got excited when we first heard. You saw Sony Michel run down in that number 1 jersey and make a tackle on special teams. You're like, oh, is that the kid from Miami? That kid from he from Armwood, Plantation, Heritage. Where's he from? Because you weren't quite sure. Now it's going to be, hey, who's that? Who's that running back from Buford? Just saying, there's going to be an influx of names that we're not talking about now. That by game 6, maybe after that Tennessee game, we're like, wow. Noah Thomas was the best name Georgia did in the transfer portal. Or CJ Wiley. There's just a lot of potential, a lot of names there that are going to blow up. Who's on your list?
For sure, yeah. And I think I saw somebody talking about defensive transfers. I got Joshua Horton from Miami. Talking about rebuilding the trenches. He's a guy who played at Miami, played power conference football. Another guy that, who's to say he doesn't work his way into one of those top defensive. Xavier McLeod. By the end of last year, Xavier McLeod was one of the better performing defensive linemen Georgia had. He was everywhere in the SEC championship against Texas. So a guy like that. Again, Elijah Griffin. Kirby got asked about him at media days. Okay, you get asked about the 5-star guy, and he was very, very, very complimentary of Griffin in terms of he's smart. He's learning everything the right way. He's a guy who. Joseph Jonah-Janye was in position to do that last year, work his way in as a freshman, and he dealt with some injuries. So that's another guy, Ajanye, who he just looks like this kid's going to be a stud on the defensive line. And I think, again, by the Tennessee game, I think is when you're really going to see who the top, say, 6 or 7 defensive linemen are. They rotate, whatever. But and then Modozi, we've heard so much about Modozi. Harrison wrote that story for Colt Kubelik, said he's going to win an SEC, Defensive Player of the Year?
Defensive Player of the Year.
Whatever it was, yeah. And it's again, you hear Army transfer, and you're like, okay, it's a big step up in competition. This guy's been going against the option in practice for however long he's been in Army for starters. So, but he's the guy they needed, a guy they brought in, and a guy they're very excited about. So, it's just, again, there's so many new. It's weird because there's spots where they're so young, and then you think, okay, Dalen Everett is in his 3rd year playing all the time. C.J. Allen and Raylan Wilson, both, they're juniors, but they had to play so much in 23 because of injuries. Kristen Miller. Jordan Hall, I swear, has been here for like 4 years because he just had so much hype and he hasn't burst onto the scene yet, mainly because of injuries and he's had guys in front of him. That's another guy, Jordan Hall, who the talent is so there and he's been at Georgia, again, seems like forever.
Yeah, but half the people don't know his jersey number because he hasn't played.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you
But
get
he could
a
be your next Jordan Davis.
it's huge. Like injuries is such a cop out. Oh, what if he stays healthy? What if he stayed healthy? And there's going to be injuries. There always are. There's going to be injuries during fall camp. You just, from a coach's perspective, you hope they're not serious. But some of these guys just need to stay healthy, and if they are, then the trenches, the receivers, the tight ends, whatever, they can have a really big year.
Yeah, that gets kind of back to my intangibles thing. Is the guys that we're not exactly afterthoughts, but the guys that weren't really the headliners coming in, going out to claim. They're like, look, I don't have to sit behind anybody. It is wide ass open. I can jump in and take over this group. I'm not having to deflect, let's just say like the tight end room. You've got 2 established tight ends, Lawson Lucky, Oscar Dell. There's no reason that Ethan Barber can't say, look, I'm going to come out here and do my thing and try to jump up. And that would be one of the toughest, because those 2 guys are so proven. That'd be one of the toughest rooms to break into. But Colton Heinrich hadn't had a chance. Jaden Reddle looks amazing. I'm like, when do those guys break out? They're no longer, hey, Brock Bowers is here. I've got a year off until I have to do anything. No, that pops up. Same with the running back room. If you're, Roderick Robinson, who's been banged up, you're like, yeah, Nate Frazier's a guy, but I can be that number 2 guy. I know they brought in McCray, but I can do it. In other words, everywhere along the line, I don't think anybody feels like they don't have a chance to jump in. And I can't imagine what that offensive line and defensive line, those war rooms, those film rooms are going to be like. Because guys trying to move up and move around. And I'm with you. I think it could be, like you say, well into the season before we have our kind of established guys. We did have a question that I wanted to, because you were just talking about JJA. OU Herschel Walker, a great friend of our show, great supporter of our site, just a good dude. I know he's helped us out many times. He wants to know, is JJA fully healthy, and do you expect him to be a significant part of the defensive line rotation? Also, who's a good comparison for him? Malik Herring, Terry Mingler-Dawkins, Jonathan Ledbetter. Give us your JJA status report and who he reminds you of.
Yeah, I mean, I believe, to my knowledge, he definitely I can't remember if he was full go in the spring or not. I think he was, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, I mean, if he's healthy, which all indications are that he's a guy. Again, I believe he got some snaps against Clemson last year, if I'm not mistaken. So again, freshman, first game in a I don't want to say real opponent, but you know what I mean, a big top 10, top 15 game. That's saying something. So I suck at comparisons. I'm so bad at this.
I like the Malik Herring one, the first one he mentioned.
Which one?
Malik Herring.
Like more. Yeah, I like that because Warren Brinson's where my mind went first. I don't think that's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, Herring I don't think Ledbetter is terrible. Tyler Clark down there is not a bad one. An underrated guy, by the way, in the early Kirby Smarter. So yeah, again, and there's so many. A guy that is totally forgot. Even I forget about him. Nasir Johnson, who Georgia got in on him late, and I don't think he got to Athens till last summer. And who, like you said, who's to say he didn't make a big jump this spring and summer, and he worked his way into the rotation. Like there's so many of those guys who just, I don't want to say have been forgotten about. There's just nothing set in stone. Like, okay, if you're rolling out 3 defensive linemen on the first play of the year, okay, Kristen Miller's probably going to be one. Xavier McLeod's probably going to be one. After that, it's
Jordan Hall.
Like who's the next wave? Who, if this guy gets hurt, who goes in? Like there's nothing set in stone at all. There's not. So, and offensive line, same way. Like we mentioned earlier, Daniel Calhoun, he looked to have the inside track at right guard in the spring. Who's to say he hasn't been passed up Or if the running game isn't exactly clicking on all cylinders, who's to say they don't make a move and put somebody here and then you take off? So there's so much competition that it's going to carry on through the early part of the season, I think, especially again with Marshall and Austin P to open it.
Yeah,
you've got time to experiment. Basically, you got time
exactly.
to kind of mix and match and see kind of what is working best heading into the first part of that SEC schedule.
I guess that's kind of my broader point. Is I'm not sure who's who. I think you have new names. Got a good question there from Eddie from Ackworth. And by the way, their Georgia Peach State Power Hour show re-debuted this past Sunday night. Be sure to check it out on UGASports channel, or if you're watching this on Facebook, we have it there as well. So big shout out to Eddie for joining that show, or staying on my ass to get that show reintroduced with host Harrison Reno. Big glad he was there. He had a question. What about Isaiah Gibson? Do we see him in there? And then someone else asked about those freshmen. I'm like, yeah, they did just pull off the number 2 class in the nation. All those guys have been early enrollees. A lot of them are here. And I'm like saying, there are new names. We're just talking about Elijah Griffin. There's a lot of, we mentioned the 2 tight ends, the wide receivers they brought in. What if
Walker, Bo Walker's another one who
that's why I mentioned him earlier in the show. I'm like, some running back who just burst on the scene
without a ton of fanfare, and his recruitment was kind of quiet. And he's a guy who's gotten a lot of positive reviews. A guy I loved watching in high school personally when I went and watched him play. So, yeah, there's you never know. I guess like you think but then there's always kind of those 1 or 2 guys that step up. Like, did we necessarily expect Nate Frazier to have the year he had last year? Like, I wouldn't say so, right? I mean, I personally didn't.
Well, hell, I think we were all looking at Chauncey Bowens to be like the number 2 guy.
And that's another guy, by the way. We're talking about guys who might step up. Chauncey Bowens looked great at G-Day. Like, yeah, okay, it's G-Day. A lot of guys that look great at G-Day. He looked like he had a different gear at G-Day. Does he work his way into, by the middle of the season, is he that number 2 guy behind Nate Frazier? Who's to say? Maybe.
Or is it McCray? I mean, this time last year, we were talking about, hey, Branson Robinson's finally healthy. Roderick Robinson should be healthy, or could be. And all these, what about, all these other guys that are there? We didn't know who was going to break out. And so I'm with you. There are some, that'll be the theme, is Radi doesn't know crap because he's expecting all these new guys to pop up, or guys who, like I said, it would not be crazy if Jordan Hall had an all SEC year.
Sure.
But he may not have anything.
Right.
You can't say that he came out of nowhere, because he was one of the highest rated guys coming into it, but he hadn't done it before. Ernest Green hasn't locked down his side like we kind of expected him to. Drew Bobo hasn't, you're like, oh, well, he's all SEC center. No. There were very few. Were there any first team Georgia players on offense?
Offense, I don't think so. No.
Yeah, but by the end, you might have 2 or 3. That'd be tough. It'd be tough. I mean, it's out of 11. It's hard to get 3 different guys, but you could have 1 or 2, and it may not be the guys that we're expecting right off the bat. So I'm with you. It's very optimistic, but I temper that with my fear. If they can't get it done on the trenches, then all the ancillary positions, if you will, the linebackers, the outside guys, the safeties, the nickel, slot receiver, none of that will matter a dime's worth of difference if they can't get it, can't punch the ball in, get 2 yards on a carry.
And by the way, the winning in the trenches, like that applies to the pass blocking too, because we all remember what happened. Like that offensive line got embarrassed in that Ole Miss game. It was, and again, like there were injuries and whatever. It was embarrassing. Yeah, the Notre Dame game was embarrassing. So that's, you got to get that cleaned up too. So, but yeah, again, it's, you don't know. I think this team, like I was thinking about this earlier, last year and even 23, you kind of thought, okay, yeah, this is a team that has what it takes to go win a national championship. Obviously, it didn't work out that way, but you kind of knew that going into the season. I think this year is more of a, I think they can. Like, I think all the pieces are there.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I need to see it, right? Like
Thank you.
this team needs to prove that they can go. You know, if they blow out the first 2 games, they go beat Tennessee by 2 touchdowns, and they beat Alabama in the regular season for the first time in forever, then we can talk a little differently. But if they, you know, if the Tennessee game they win it like 10-7 and they lose to Alabama, then it's like, okay, well, obviously you wouldn't be dead in the national title race, especially with the playoff. But I don't like. I need to see it. We can talk ourselves into it. We can say all this stuff. I think this team needs to prove that it's a national championship contender more than the last 2 teams kind of did, at least heading into the season.
I'm with you. I'm very optimistic about what they could be, but I do want to see it. I mean, like I said, 32 years. I'm to the point. You got to prove it to me. It's like, you got to prove to me you're going to beat Florida. I can see it. You know, hey, they went to their 3rd string quarterback last year. Yeah, but that game was a lot closer than we expected against their 3rd string quarterback. So I'm always going to be a little suspicious. And again, if you were lining up Brock Bowers and you had an Andrew Thomas at left tackle, I'd be much more bullish. So I guess my optimism is everybody's dealing with the same thing. Kirby Smart has the same roster limits that everybody else does, but he always puts together the best roster. It may not be as, 5-star heavy as it used to be, but then no one is.
Right.
No one has that. It's head and shoulders. And there were years covering the team, especially when you were in school. Felt like Alabama would just, they're starting 44 were better than your 44. Now it feels like Georgia's starting 44 or better, 2 deep 44 better than just about anybody else's. And it's been that way for most of the Kirby era, or at least tied. Didn't feel like you were going in. I remember going up to those games in Tennessee when they had a 8-9 game winning streak. And you went up there and you looked across the field. And you're like, well, Georgia will be lucky to win this game. I haven't felt like Georgia will be lucky to win. I feel other teams are lucky to beat Georgia because Georgia beat themselves. So,
and again, I mean, we posted that article this morning. They're favored in every game. And like, okay, I think your hardest opponents are at home, I think is fair to say. Bama's at home, Texas is at home, Ole Miss is at home. So, but I mean, who on paper would you say is going to have the talent advantage over Georgia, at least right now? Because maybe Texas, but I don't even think
Texas linebackers.
They lost a lot. So, and there's a question. We'll get to Harrison's question, but there's one over here from Ford Radi. Does Georgia have a better chance at a national championship because Georgia improved or because other contenders regressed? I don't know about regressed, but like Ohio State's got a new quarterback. Alabama's got a new quarterback. Texas has a new quarterback. So many of these top schools, like I think that's part of the reason I've seen some people pick LSU to win the national championship, the SEC championship.
People
even necessarily because they're Clemson too. Just because you've got a pretty good feeling of what Garrett Nussmeier is, right? You got a good feeling of what Cade Klubnik is with how he played at the end of last year. So,
and Penn State held on to a lot of talent.
These top talented teams overall, you don't know what you're going to get a quarterback. Like, there's a world where Julian Sayin at Ohio State, for example, he struggles and they lose a couple games and they might sneak into the playoff on the back end, but they're not a true championship contender, for example. I don't know, but that could happen at Texas. We don't know. Texas plays at Ohio State week 1. I cannot think of a more difficult way to throw Arch Manning into the fire than going to Ohio State week 1. So if you're Texas, if you lose that game, then you're thinking all of a sudden we play at Georgia. That's a tough one to win. They think Texas goes to Florida. That could be a trap game. Oklahoma's always tough. Like there's a world where Texas loses 2 or 3 games. There's a lot of uncertainty, I think, going into the season just because so many of these top teams they got new quarterbacks. Like I think Clemson's got a stud quarterback and a ridiculous defensive line, which is a pretty good recipe, at least when you're looking at preseason contenders and stuff.
But I'm with you with Ford. Ford asked a great question. I think you answered it really well. With did Georgia get better or the other teams regressed? We talked about the sheer number. I mean, another double-digit list of guys that leave Georgia go to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Can't have that every year and just plug and play. But Kirby has. He's done it. He's lost 15. He's lost 13. He's lost 10. And he's still right there in the playoffs, or only losing one game in 23. Just ridiculous, despite it. And the other teams also lost a lot of guys. So I think the team that kind of held on to the most was Penn State. That's why a lot of people have them. But they haven't. It's like they got to prove it.
Like, yeah, Penn State. I mean, listen, they won 2 playoff games last year. Like, that's great. One of them was at home against an SMU team. SMU deserved to be in the playoff, don't get me wrong, but that was an SMU team that was overmatched. And then your other playoff win was against Boise State. So I still think James Franklin, they went into semifinals last year, but he's still in that mode of, can he win the big game? And I don't know.
Just going back to Ford's question there, it's like, well, the other teams, they kept a lot of their players, but you don't know what you're getting with them.
Drew Aller is this hyped up guy. That game against Notre Dame was tied, and he throws a pick that sets up Notre Dame to kick a field goal and end their season. So does he take the next step? And so, I don't know that Penn State 1 through 44 is more talented than Georgia is, but they've got their quarterback. I don't know that LSU 1 through 44 is as talented as Georgia or Alabama is, but they've got a really, really talented quarterback back. So I don't know. It's a very interesting dynamic to start the year, because the teams with more overall talent, I think, have the new quarterbacks, and the teams with the returning stud quarterbacks might be a step behind, just a small step behind. Clemson's not the Little Sisters of the Poor, right? But small step behind that top tier in terms of 1 through 44, 1 through 85, whatever talent. So we'll see.
The question is, does Georgia have a stud quarterback? And we will answer that in 1 second. First, I want to mention our friends over at Athens Ford, a fantastic place if you need to get a new vehicle or a pre-owned vehicle, especially if they're certified pre-owned. I did that with a Ford Explorer. I got it for hardly any miles on it. I'm driving that thing till the wheels come off because I know I got the best deal ever. Although I do love those new Ford F-150s. Kind of, we're moving my aunt over the summer, and I kind of wish I had a new Ford F-150. But anyway, check out our friends at Athens Ford. You'll be very glad you did so. They will be sponsoring our watch along show again this year. I'm 98% certain, as will Yingling Flight. So we should have some our sponsors lined up for the watch along show. And again, less than 5 weeks, and we'll be watching Georgia put out all these new guys, including their new quarterback that we have a lot of questions about. And there's nothing wrong with having a new quarterback and having questions and stuff like that. But when you have questions about your business or what your current job situation is, I want you to reach out to my friend Andy Ludecky at myperfectfranchise.net. Say, Andy, I'm tired of working for somebody else. I'm tired of being the guy who signs the back of the check. I want to be the guy that signs the front of the check and pay people. I want to have unlimited personal time off. I want to get out of the rat race. I don't want to be a wage slave to someone else. I want to run the show. And being a small business owner, I can tell you there's nothing greater in the world. There's nothing more terrifying in the world than running your own business. But there's also nothing better that you can do as a person than to be in charge of your own career. So the way to get that done is to reach out to Andy Ludecky at myperfectfranchise.net, and you'll be very glad that you did so. All right, the question, Jed. Well, first let's get Harrison's. Harrison says, do you all see Daniel Harris, Ellis Robinson, DeMello Jones trading time opposite Everett this year?
I think so.
CB2?
To a certain extent, yeah, because I think that's another one. It's going to go all through fall camp. I think Daniel Harris would have to have the leg up because he's played the most. But I mean, that doesn't mean anything. And again,
DeMello's really good.
DeMello's really good. Ellis Robinson, again, seems like he's been at Georgia forever, and he hasn't, but we've been getting asked about him every day since he got on campus. And it's like,
he's a 5-star really number 1 cornerback.
Yeah. So, and again, you've got those first 2 games where you can really mix and match and see how it looks, and then go into it from there. So, and I wonder if, I mean, there's a world where, like we saw Kamari Lassiter a few years ago against, I think it was Ole Miss. He moved into star. Could Dalen Everett do that? And you get 3 of them on the field? I don't know, maybe against teams that like to throw the ball around. So I don't know. I definitely think there's going to be some rotation just because Kirby Smart likes that. And if you're good enough to play, you will play. But I mean, again, I think, not that I'm breaking any news here, but I think Daniel Harris would have the leg up because he's played the most. But yeah, I think that's going to be an open competition. And Kirby's not afraid to make a change. Like, it was Humphrey and Harris for a lot of that year. And then Julian Humphrey, that first or second drive against Tennessee, he got that pass interference call down in the end zone, and he was virtually never heard from again. And Kirby went full time to Daniel Harris. So he's not afraid to really kind of shake things up in the middle of the season. But yeah, there's going to be some rotation at that spot, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've heard good things about Daniel Harris, but at the same time, he was an absolute liability last year. And when you watch teams they just looked for him and they went right after him. And that's not completely fair because, I mean, it's the same when Everett was on the opposite side of, say, Kamari Lassiter. People are like, Dalen Everett sucks, and they're targeting him. Yeah, because you don't want to throw against Kamari Lassiter.
Mm-hmm.
Now you don't want to throw against Dalen Everett. So, and you're going to run routes to really expose him. You go after a weak link as hard as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And one of 2 things happens. You either get better or you get replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure which has happened. I've been told he's gotten a lot better. Great. That's awesome. I'll be happy for him. I don't ever want to pick on a kid. At the same time, he's got DeMello nipping at his heels. Ellis Robinson has the link. Saw the picture of him that went viral a few weeks ago, how long-armed he is. This kid is an absolute baller. That is a tough room. That is a tough room to be the guy in. Well, toughest room, of course, all of our preseason expectations. And there was a big talk yesterday about getting rid of preseason polls and stuff. I thought that was stupid. I think you're dumb if you put anything into preseason polls, but you can't get rid of them because we want context. We want to know who are the good teams. And like you said, a lot of the good teams are based on who has a good quarterback. And the quarterback goes a long way. It's the most important position on the field. We can't say that all you need to be is serviceable. I don't think that's fair. Does Georgia have a good quarterback? Do they have a SEC winning quarterback? Do they have a national title winning quarterback? Jed May, what's the answer?
I think so. Question mark?
Okay, we're not going to clip that because I led that up to be a nice, like, little video clip, and just like, what if I know?
I mean, I think, somebody, I'd never thought of it this way. I saw somebody compare Gunnar to Max Duggan from TCU a few years ago, and I think that's like, there is something like, you hear guys talk, oh, he's a gamer. Like, he's just a dog. And I to a certain extent, I think that's overrated, but I also think at quarterback that can really go a long way. Because we saw how the team rallied behind Gunnar in the SEC championship, and that game was tied. Like, it's not like he just came in and had to not screw things up and protect a huge lead. Like, Georgia, I can't remember what it was at halftime.
He only drove the field, scored,
and they had to. Like, he threw a horrible interception at the end of that game. There's no defending it. He chucked the ball to nowhere. Easily could have been a pick six and whatever. But yeah, he managed the offense and won that game. So, and now he's had 8 months of being the number one guy. So I think, like I said earlier, I think so, but I need to see it. If Georgia, again, if they go up to Knoxville and Georgia wins, but it's 10-7, and Gunnar completes like 52% of his passes and throws a couple, just bad picks and whatever, then it's like, okay, well, maybe not. But I think with what's around him, I don't know if you can win a national title with a game manager or quarterback, but I think this could be one of those type of years where you get the ball to the receivers, you get in the right place. How many times have we heard Kirby Smart say, oh yeah, well, Carson Yeah, he threw 5 picks the other day, but he gets us in the right play.
Yeah.
That's important. Can Gunnar do that on a consistent basis? So I think the key is, can Gunnar make everybody around him better? Can he run the offense efficiently? And I mean, he's been at Georgia for 3 years or 4 years or whatever it is. Like he should be able to by now. So I think so. Right now, I would say, yeah, I think Georgia can win a national title with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback. There's your clip, Roddy. But he's got to prove it. I think he's got to prove it to us, and he's going to get those chances early on. He's got at Tennessee, he's got Alabama at home, and I think we'll have a better idea then. But as of now, yeah, I think with what we know of him so far and what he has around him on both sides of the ball, if the rest of the team plays up to their ability, yeah, I think Georgia can win a national title with Gunnar at quarterback.
Chase has a good quote here. He said Stetson was considered a game manager per every one. He won 2 natties.
Exactly. Like if you look at Gunnar and Carson side by side, if you watched them throw, you probably say Carson Beck is the more talented quarterback, right? Just pure natural talent. But again, like to that point, you'd probably say the same thing about Stetson and Carson Beck. And Stetson got the job done in his 2 years as a starter, and Carson Beck didn't. So, and not all that's Carson's fault, not all that's Stetson's credit either. But yeah, I think it's about there's so many of those intangible things as a quarterback. And I think Gunnar has a lot of them from what we've seen so far. We saw him at media days, and he's just, oh shucks, man, I just want to go out there and play football. I go home and fish on the weekends. That's cool. And I think there's so much of that kind of stuff. Like it's such a cliche, and I don't like saying it, but it's true. Like if he's, how many times have we heard these guys leading up to the Sugar Bowl last year? Gunnar this, Gunnar that. Every single player got asked about Gunnar because we didn't talk to him. And they all just said they love playing behind him. He's a great guy, this and this and all of this stuff. I think that matters at quarterback. And I think, is he going to be the guy that throws the ball 50 times a game and for 450 yards? Like, no, I don't think he's really that guy. But if he can be efficient, I mean, Jake Fromm wasn't that guy. And Jake Fromm, he was a blown defensive coverage from one national championship, and the SEC championship collapsed from making the playoff again. So you can get there. And the talent level on this team is probably better than the 17 and 18 teams, I would say off the top of my head. So, I think they can get there, but Gunnar's got to prove it to us too. I think that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I won't call it the hype, but the kind of rah-rah feel-good stuff of the summer about Gunnar Stockton, he's just a baller. Yeah, he is. And, he's not complicated, he just wants to play football and drives a truck, Yeah, I get all that. Does that get your first down? No. But the intangibles of it, I will say this. There are a lot of players on last year's team did not like Carson Beck. Teammates didn't like it. But that's true in every locker room. There are guys that don't like other guys. It happens. That is not a bang on Carson Beck. I'm sure there are guys that didn't like Aaron Murray or DJ Shockley or Eric Zier or Fran Tarkenton. I mean, it's just the way it goes. I'm just saying you're a lot harder pressed to find guys that don't like Gunnar. A lot of those guys loved Stetson Bennett. They played for him. They loved him as a true freshman when you had Jacob Eason, supposed to be the guy. And Stetson's out there running the scout team, and guys they're calling him Johnny Football. They love it. It's like he's kind of a winner. That's the dedication. Again, just because your team's dedicated to you and they think, hey, that's my quarterback. That's my quarterback. Well, did that help you? Did you stop on 3rd and 2? Christian Miller, did you get in the backfield and stop the play? You can tell me how great Gunnar Stockton is, but if you didn't make the goddamn tackle, then what does it matter? So you got to make the tackle. You got to get that pick, Dalen. You can't let the ball go through your hands. So do your job and then let your quarterback do it. But they do rally to him. And that is one of the intangibles. I go back to this. We mentioned earlier, this is a different team. I felt like the last 2 years, they were trying to be a part of that 21 and 22 teams. The 2025 Georgia Bulldogs are a different team, and they will set up for this year and next year and maybe the year after. This is where the new names are going to pop up.
Mhm.
It's going to start quarterback with guys who really love their QB. They want to win for him, which again doesn't get you an automatic first down, doesn't get you 3 points. It doesn't make a field goal good.
Mhm.
It doesn't fix a bad snap. Hopefully, it gets you into the right play. But where it will show up is the fact that that baller mentality, that aw shucks attitude, means this is a guy who will take off and run.
Mhm.
People forget how the Georgia defense changed when Aaron Murray started running. And Jake Fromm, who had no backup, all of a sudden against that Tennessee game, tucked and ran a couple times, and all of a sudden people are like, oh my goodness, look at this. The fact that you have to be honest when you play Georgia's offense, because that quarterback will take off and run, and he may not slide. I hope he does, but you can't cheat like they did against Carson Beck, knowing that he's not going to keep the ball on when he hands it off of the middle on a read or something like that. He's going to keep it on a naked bootleg. Give Gunnar naked bootlegs, he will. And that's what we saw him do for years. He would look at the defense and he's like, okay, they're taking away the pass. I'm going to run it. Oh, they're trying to stop me on the run. I'm going to pick them apart. And he picked teams apart. Granted, that's in high school, but it's the same thing here. Now that he's got tight end options, wide receiver options, running back options, he knows football. He's son of a coach. He's going to get him in the right play, and he's going to execute it well. Will it be enough to win a title? There's too many other opposing intangibles, if you will, that happen in the college. It's much easier to pick the field than the one team. But I'm going to tell you, the guys rally around him, and he is an absolute leader, and he's going to your question, will he make them better like Stetson did? Stetson made the guys around him better.
I think
the
one thing we don't know about Gunnar, and I don't know if or when we will know that, is okay, that Peach Bowl against Ohio State, Georgia's down 6 with 2 minutes left or whatever. Stetson, he leads him down the field. He that throw to Kearis Jackson down the middle, he throws a touchdown to. Can Gunnar go win a game for you? Not manage the game, not do this. Can he go win a game for? And we don't.
Stetson did that a couple times.
He did that to an extent against Texas. Sure, like we'll give him that. But can he do it? And we could find that out against Tennessee, or we could not know going into we might find out against Texas in November. We might find out against Florida. Like we might not know until a potential SEC championship game or the playoff. There's no way to know. So we might not know at all. He might be the game manager, and the defense is a 21 defense, and Georgia wins every game by 10, and they go win a national championship. So I don't know. I think that's the biggest question about Gunnar. The intangibles, the leadership, all that stuff. I think we feel like the offense is in a pretty good place. Can he go? I mean, someone was talking about in the comments, he throws a great deep ball. That one he threw in the Sugar Bowl, the infamous, where the ref ran into the guy on the sideline. That throw was an awesome throw down the sideline. It was a beautiful ball. So he's got that in him. But can he do it in a 2-minute drill against Alabama or Ohio State, Clemson, whatever? We don't know that right now.
I'll put it this way. When he goes in the huddle, they're down by 4. 2 minutes left. Ole Miss is up at home. You've got this 32-game win streak at home, and there's pressures on. Everyone's yelling. Does he make that throw? Absolutely. Does it get, will it get picked off? Maybe. Don't know. My point is the guys in the huddle are going to believe in it. He'll believe in himself.
Mm-hmm.
All the intangibles we talked about, the leadership, the making the guys around him, he has it. I don't feel that Carson had that at times. I don't feel that the guys had Carson's back and would run through a wall for him. Stequavius did. Those guys, they loved him. They saw him struggle. A lot of those guys were there. They remember him transfer back in from Jones. They're guys that, in other words, it would be a red flag if your quarterback couldn't check off these leadership boxes, the talent boxes, the deep ball box. There are a lot of bad Carson Beck deep balls, just god awful throws. And there were times that the throws were great and they dropped them. And would Carson get mad? Hell yeah. I hit you in the hands and you dropped it. You saw in that Tech game, he was about to lose his damn mind. So many drop passes. And once it got out there, and how different would all that offensive looked if they actually made some of those catches, extended those drives? You get different plays, another 3 downs. A lot of those plays are designed to go to the house. Give them 3 more tries. And instead of getting 50 offensive plays or 40 offensive plays a game, you get 60, 70. Come on. That's a completely different narrative that we're talking about. But the fact that your quarterback does check those boxes, he does check that leadership box. He does check the knowledge, fearless. It's the most you can hope for, And Georgia did look at other quarterbacks in the transfer portal. They looked at Jackson Arnold, but again, looking at them and trying to sign them is different than saying we got to have one and then putting up the biggest NIL package to get them.
Mm-hmm.
Auburn had to have Jackson Arnold. Absolutely, you got to have somebody. Georgia's like, yeah, if we could get him, great, but we're not going to. We're going to spend this money to bring in McCray. We're going to bring Jaden Harris. We're going to bring in other guys. We need safeties. We need edge rushers. We need Modozi. We would love to have another quarterback, a healthy quarterback with some experience. We've had 0 experience, but we are just incredibly thin at outside linebacker, defensive end. We are incredibly thin in safety. We got to bring. Was it 3 safeties they brought in?
Yeah, Maddox, Branch, and Harris. Yeah.
That tells you where the coaches were freaking out. It wasn't a quarterback. So, and again, would you like to have Nussmeier? Absolutely, but you don't got him. So, anyway, that's the end of my rant. Anything else you wanted to touch on before we go?
Again, just to kind of what I said at the beginning, like everybody watching the show is going to spend the next month reading every practice report, every insider note, whatever. What Gunnar looked like today? What Gunnar looked like today? But there are a lot of other things that this team's got to get better at, and they very. I'm not saying like, oh, this team is screwed no matter who the quarterback is. Like, yeah, if they run the ball better, and the defensive line plays better, and the secondary gets better, yeah, this team can go on a rampage and win a national championship, sure. But I guess there's a lot of questions this team needs to answer over the next month and in the first couple of weeks of the season before they get into that SEC schedule to prove to me, to you, to all y'all watching that they can go win a championship. I think they can, and I think by the end of September, after they played Tennessee and Alabama, we'll be able to more firmly say I know they can, or I don't think so.
They'll make the playoffs.
Right.
The question will go from are we debating whether or not Georgia can win a title to whether or not Georgia can make the playoffs.
Exactly.
And once you see that narrative shift, you have your answer.
Like there's a world where they're 4-0 and you're coming off a win over Alabama, or I don't think it's impossible. They're 2-2 with losses to Tennessee and Alabama. Like I don't think that's impossible. I'm not picking them to lose to Tennessee, but it could happen. So I don't know. They got to prove it. I think that's the thing. I think they've got the talent. I think they've got the intangibles. I think they've got all that stuff. They got to go out and show it to us.
Yeah. And we will get our first glimpse at the end of this week. So I'll be back in Athens here shortly. Appreciate everybody putting up with the time off that we took for this show. I did have some stuff I needed to do with the family back home, my dad's hometown, if you will. So went to see family I hadn't seen since 2019, 6 years. So it's good to go back and see some of the cousins and aunts and uncles in Egypt and Jordan. So that was fun. And I appreciate everybody joining us today as we get back on track. And be sure to tune in 48 hours. We'll be finishing up the Kirby Smart press conference and talking to some of the players. And hopefully the next day we will get to go to practice and watch some of that. So we will have practice reports coming hot and heavy from the staff at UGASports in 48 hours. So it should be a lot of fun. Until then, we appreciate everybody who is a subscriber to the site. And again, if you're not a member of UGAsports.com, on July 1st, we joined the On3 network. So now if you sign up, you get not only UGAsports.com, but you get our buddies over at Dawgs HQ, Rusty, Jake, and the two Jakes, and all the great coverage and stuff that they do over there. And there's some other bonuses coming your way. So you can almost get a 3-for-1 if you sign up for UGAsports.com. But be sure you mark UGAsports.com when you sign up, because that's where you want your access to. So hit them up when you get a chance, and we will talk to you. I'm sure Jed and I will have a post-practice breakdown as well when we get to watch. When we get to watch something, we'll do a fun breakdown. Close enough that you can tell we're at practice, but not close enough that you can hear Kirby Smart cussing on the microphone.
A yearly tradition, unlike any other.